Hi, it's Bandit. If you don't know me, welcome. I animate, illustrate, and sometimes I eat food. So, there's that. And now with that out of the way. Sushi! Commonly, it is raw fish on top of rice if you're getting kind of the typical stuff that's considered traditional. It originates from Japan, and unfortunately is the main enemy of my wallet. Recently, a new sushi shop popped up near where I live, and I decided to go ahead and try it out. Some things to note here is that I brought 2 others with me to help eat. The other is that I ordered one of each of this place's hand rolls, which was 9 in total. We also got some appetizers, entrees, and drinks/drink, so there is that to take into note. For the appetizers, we got gyoza and pork belly skewers. The gyoza, in fairness, was juicy and meaty, so it did have quite a bit of filling, but it didn't really stand out to me. It kind of landed pretty close to what supermarket gyoza was like, and so, at least for me, it wasn't very standout-ish. But then we move on to the pork belly skewers, which were coated in a sort of sweet teriyaki sauce topped with puffed rice and sesame seeds. It also came with a side of butter lettuce and pickled shallots, and honestly, while it wasn't great alone, it was actually really good with the butter lettuce and the shallots, because the shallots were pickled and it helped, bring extra notes into it. The first roll that we got was a spicy tuna with pickled radish or daikon inside of it. It was not as spicy as I was expecting it. Honestly, was expecting a little more spice, but the daikon was really helpful. It had some sourness and sweetness to add, and then you had your tuna. The tuna was really fresh, and so that was really nice. The next roll that we received was a plain tuna roll, which was just fresh tuna in the center. This one was honestly one of my favorites. The fresh tuna was just really nice. It was a great palate cleanser in a sense. With a little bit of soy sauce, it was absolutely fantastic and probably one of my favorites. I think the reason why I liked it so much was just because of the freshness of the tuna itself. From the tuna roll, we then got the yellowtail sashimi with the ponzu sauce. This was, I think, the only other non-hand roll item that we ended up receiving kind of for an entree, and honestly, I was not the largest fan of it. As much as the fish was so fresh and you had all of these really good flavors complementing it, especially from the sauce, it was a little much on my end, especially considering that the sauce was I think a ponzu yuzu sauce. So it definitely was a lot stronger than the fish. With a little bit of soy sauce, it kind of helped cancel it out, but it's it was not my favorite. It was still very fresh though and very good quality. We then received the shrimp tempura with spicy mayonnaise. I do not know if there was any spicy mayonnaise because I didn't taste it. The shrimp tempura though was very crispy, and honestly, the shrimp stood out as sweet and chewy, not in a bad way, but a soft, fluffy chew kind of way. So honestly, that one was rating very close to the tuna, but I wish that I could taste a bit more of the spicy mayo because it was only after that my mom, who was with me, pointed out that there was no spicy mayonnaise, so it was a little disappointing. After our shrimp tempura, we received the marinated tofu with cucumber roll. This one honestly did not taste like anything and was more of a texture. It was crunchy and soft. You had a little bit of chew from the tofu, but honestly, it was really hard to tell if there was any flavors inside the cucumber. We then received the nigiri, which was apparently like a chef special, so like they changed it every day, and that day it was black cod. Personally, I will say this, it ranked at the bottom of everything, like right next to the marinated tofu with cucumber, but not because it didn't taste like anything, but rather because of the texture. The best way it was described was kind of like slimy mochi, but I don't think that's of any fault to how it was prepared. I just think like it was more of like personal preference. And now we move to unagi, which is essentially eel. This one, honestly, was one of my favorites. Unagi is personally a favorite of mine, and so I really do enjoy eel. I do not hold really high expectations for unagi. I'm also not picky, so I feel like that kind of affected it. But essentially, it was with a marinade that was simple, and it had a little bit of chew, but it was very soft and light. And honestly, like, the marinade didn't overpower the eel. The eel was not overpowering it, but it is a very gentle fish. So it was really nice. The feedback from my mom, who was also like helping me finish these rolls, she thought that the sauce should have been thicker, but personally I thought it was perfectly fine. So, you know, it was pretty good. And this ranks very close to the top. We finally got the most basic bitch of all rolls, which was the California roll. Honestly, the most American thing I can think of, in fairness. It did not have particularly a lot of flavor, and like it was not super strong. At the same time though, like it still tasted fine. I partially was expecting for there to be crab salad inside, but there wasn't, so I'm not gonna say that there were many complaints. It was a very neutral kind of, it still is a very neutral feeling about it. And now we're getting to one of my other favorites. This was the scallop roll with yuzu. When it came, it looked like it was like a yuzu mayo that was put around it. And after having so many of these different rolls, I was also starting to get pretty full. But I took my bite and it was actually really good. I liked the refreshing notes of it, essentially, that were put in the mayo. I loved how tender the scallops were because it didn't like make them feel like they were, you know, a secondary thought. It went very well as a singular piece together, and they definitely were as delicious. So personally, this one like reaches very close to the top. And now we get the wagyu roll, which was essentially a Japanese beef roll. Personally, this one was not like overly my favorite. I know that my mother enjoyed it, but at least for me, it was like you couldn't really taste the beef beyond the sauce. So this one was kind of just like, okay, this is pretty good, but overall it was like you couldn't taste the beef. And then that's all I really have to say about it. So, and now we get to my absolute favorite, which of them all, surprisingly, was the salmon roll with crispy rice. I was honestly really surprised because I'm not usually a huge fan of salmon. Salmon often to me ends up feeling like it usually is like the most cheaped out, or you know, like the most cost cut on them all. So this was really a big surprise. I think it was because the crispy rice, a little bit of mayonnaise inside, all helped kind of like soothe the fattiness of the salmon itself, and also provided like a variety of texture. So for this, I will say like this was my favorite hand roll. We also ended up getting a burger for our non-sushi loving person in our group, and honestly, I didn't try it, but that was also because I was super duper full. But they did say that it was actually really tasty, so there's that. Overall, my takeaways were that the food was very fresh and tasty. The price was reasonable. Although, on that note, I will say don't buy the entire menu like I did, because it definitely destroyed my wallet. But the staff was so kind, they were so nice, and they let me record. They were so helpful by keeping the table clean. So honestly, shout out to them. They were so fantastic throughout this whole ordeal. On other notes, I definitely will return later to try the burger on my own, but this place gets a solid 9.5 out of 10. There were things missing that I thought should have been there, but they also didn't overly impact my meal, like the mayo missing shrimp. Not the mayo missing shrimp, the shrimp missing mayo. We're gonna leave that in. But, so there's that.